Hello. Um, I'm ready to field questions. Okay. Hi, Jessica. What's your question?
Oh, actually, sorry. I realized my mic is on.
Here we go.
I thought I was having trouble. Um, I want to yeah, I want to loop over like months actually. And so basically I want to like for every month see how many connections existed uh for which the timestamp is less than the month.
Okay.
Um, to get a little bit of time series view.
Okay.
But couldn't quite figure out like yeah, I was wondering the like easiest way to do that if it's by creating a UDF or um, something else that I haven't thought of.
Sure. Um, so how to loop in pig, right? It's just a
Hmm.
general question. Um, so I think you're spot on that it's likely something that you want to implement using EDF because pig itself does not have any built-in loop functionality. Um, but there might be a way to structure the script that in a way that doesn't necessarily require looping. So maybe if you can sort of help set the context by describing the task you're trying to accomplish.
So what I want to do is for uh, every month, I guess I could create a list, like upload a list of like months. So for every, so let's say 2010 January, 2010 February, 2010
Uh-huh.
March, and so on. I want to uh, look at well, two things I want to do. I want to look at um, the connections data and keep only like filter for timestamp like less than the month. So basically, the connection existed prior to that month.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also want to try, but I think I can, if I can figure out that first question, I can do the second, which is look into the member data and say who were the members who were working at a given company uh, at like at that time by using the start year month and end year month data.
Okay. Mm.
But I think yeah the first one is sufficient for my question. The first question is sufficient.
Okay. Um, right. So potential way to um, so I'm trying to think of a way to do it without having to do loops, specifically because if you're looking at all of connections, like the data set that would be an input to the EDF would be somewhat large. So
do it first on. I mean, yeah, it would be better to know the most efficient way of doing it. I might be able to reduce it by looking at by limiting it to a set number of members in each month, and then looking only at connections affecting those members.
got it. Yeah, that
But
makes sense as well.
maybe is there a way to do it with just like a list where now I've been I've been brushing up on my Python. That's what I'm thinking in terms of
Sure.
this.
No, sure.
So where I just like look. No, I don't know. I'm not. I haven't. I'm trying to think of an alternative, but nothing's like quite coming together in my mind.
Got it. So maybe start if we go ahead and bucket all the connections by the year and month they were created, right? Yeah. We can do that. So that would give us sort of groups of connections which are create a particular year and month combination. But that doesn't give us what we're looking for.
Basically, what I want to end up with, so the purpose of this is to try to figure out, how like company networks evolve. And what I have in mind for an ultimate output is for like a set of company, like for a set of public companies, I have a time series of their internal connections. And I think like what that I'm gonna assume that connections aren't destroyed.
Sure.
Because anyway, I can't observe connections that no longer exist. So I'm just gonna look like in each month. I want to count connections that have been made up to then. So I want to include.
Got it.
So even if I bucket, the reason I say this is even if I bucket connections by year month, I want to then when I like construct my whatever like count the number of internal connections, I want to count the connections that also were made in prior months.
Yes. So I understand. And do you have sort of a fixed number of months to look at?
I could. I can like.
No. I'm just trying to understand. So, let's say that you were looking at. So you'd want to group all the connections within a particular company, right? So that's to say that.
I could also I could start by doing this yearly if it's like monthly maybe is too granular.
Yeah, yearly it just makes it simpler because you have fewer inputs. Like so a year, a start of a year, end of a year has a predefined timestamp, right? So that will help you do things like say, if if the timestamp for the connection is less than this timestamp, then assign it this group, right?
Yeah.
And even that to make that sort of that kind of assignment of a group you can do in a UDF, right? And that UDF implementation is sort of straightforward because you would look at the connection timestamp and you'd say, okay, what group do I want to what group do I want to put this in? Or you would say, I want to put this that this connection existed before the year. So I guess, yeah, if you
pull
knew
out the
what,
year from the timestamp and then just group by year.
yeah, uh, which is so we'll group by year. But what I mean is, um, if you know which years you're looking for or which year and months you're looking for, you can say something like, um, you know, did
Yeah, I mean
did
with
did
oh
this
sorry.
belong in this year? Did this does this belong in this in does this belong in this year? Or sort of like, do I count it for this bucket? Um,
If it's
so do
annually, actually like I only have, even if I wanted to, I couldn't go further than 10 years. So it could also be a matter of, repeating 10 times, uh,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
like filter by year less than,
Yep. Yeah,
and
so that
keep
will give
going.
you the sort of the ten splits, right? The 10 years that you can get the splits for. Uh, and then you'll have 10 different relations, right? Or 10 different groups within, or 10 different sort of, year 2010, year 2011, year 2012. Um, and with that in mind, then you can do the same analysis within each one of those groups. Um, I'm trying to think of a way to do this in Pig where you would label each one of the groups, each one of the connections with a particular. Does it belong in this year? Does it belong in this year? Does this belong in this year? And then you can kind of group by those fields. So what I'm thinking is for each record, maybe you can come up with um, all the years or all the year month combinations in which it ought to be included, right? So you can look at the connection. You
Mm,
can you can look at a connection timestamp and say, okay, I'm going to include this I'm going to include this for 2010, 2011, 2012, uh, but not 2009 because in 2009 this connection didn't exist,
yeah.
right? So if you have that set of if you predefine that set of years or months, right, then you can write a UDF that given a timestamp will set true for for this year, for this year, for this year, but not for that year.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
think I see how to I think I see how to do it for annually actually.
and
Just because it's a more manageable number of commands.
yes, yeah, exactly.
Um, and then
And
I
then
can always use Excel to customize like a large number of, even if it was more than 10.
yep,
That's always like the brute force way, right? Of
sure, sure.
making a loop is to use Excel to like uh, write, yeah, write like 15 different commands where just one of the parameters changes.
Yep, and I would say that sorry, the in general for you want to write loops in UDFs. Like Pig doesn't have a loop in itself. Um,
Hmm.
but the trade-off there is how much you'll be able to process in the UDF. Because if you input too much data in the UDF, then the UDF will fail because it's taken in too much data.
Fair enough.
Um,
But so if I did, let's say I had like a much smaller sample that I wanted to put through a UDF. One thing that
mhm.
I wasn't clear on is how do I get, so in the tutorial we had UDF return, uh, I forget, like maybe like, capitalize all of a given
Yeah.
field or something. But how do I like pull out a data set? How do I get the UDF to return a data set? Or can
So,
you provide an example code for sample code?
sure. So, the the Python UDFs return they'll return whatever you return in the actual in Python, right? So you can return
Okay, so I can just say return, like in the Python code, I can say return, like I basically define a function,
yeah.
and the output of that function is return uh, connections year one, and then in Pig, I type my command as like the function applied to a data set.
Yeah. So the function is you can uh, complex. So the in UDF you can return whatever the function returns, right? So you can return whatever function returns and Pig supports. So a list, right, which is a tuple in Pig, and that's fine, or a map, or a sort of like a list of lists, or like a list of tuples, right? So these are all data structures that Pig supports. So what will happen then when you call the UDF, you will have to give the schema that you expect the UDF to return, right? So if it's just a single field, then you don't need to worry about what the return schema would be. You can just say, oh, it's a simple integer. You don't need to worry about it. If it's a more complicated type, then you want to give a directive which is like, so let's say you had a UDF that returned a tuple with 3 fields. Which returns a tuple with 3 fields, right?
So what we have in mind is more like a dictionary with 3 keys, and then each value assigned to each of the 3 keys is a list.
Yeah. So returns a map of lists.
Okay. Yeah. Right? Okay.
Cool. It's fine. So let's call this UDF connections, right? Or something like this. So let's say the UDF is connections, or something like that, right? So what you do then is, assuming you grouped something, right? You would do something for each company connections. Generate, and let's assume company connections was some sort of a grouping, right? So this is it would have like a group of items or a bag of items, some non-trivial data structure, right? You would do connections, generate connections, which would be the call to the UDF, whatever this is, like items. I don't know what you'd call that field on. And then you'd put as, and here's where you'd have to define the schema for it. So then the schema would be something like, I need to look at the concrete syntax, or I can connect. I can later correct this. So you'd say this is, connections.
Sorry, I actually got booted off for like.
Oh, yeah, no problem. So
but it's okay. I can see like with the code you wrote.
Yeah. So for each company connections, generate connections, which is a call to UDF, and then you'd have to define what the structure you expect in the return to be. So you'd say, first is the actual name, and then you would give the schema, right? And schema would be something like map. It would be a map of, tuples. So like a open parentheses declares a tuple, and say you had fields, which was like, um, you know, key, and then here you'd have another tuple, and you'd say, count and, average and variance, right? Let's say that's the kind of structure that you were returning.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have to use this as to basically cast the return into a particular schema.
Got
it. So that's what you need to do if you had a UDF that was returning a more complicated schema and you're writing the UDF in Python.
Okay, great.
And I can get the details of the schema better. So do get the schema details. Yeah. So the actual the syntax for the schema I need to clarify here, but general that would be the shape of it.
Thanks a lot.
And then the new record the new relation that you would have that schema for that field.
Got it.
Yeah. And I can also add we'll add a more complex example to the tutorial. For this. Okay. And is this something that you need immediately?
I think this gives me a good. I have a good sense of how to proceed on my end.
Okay. Great. I don't see any other questions on the channel. All right.
I have another question, but I'm happy
of course.
someone else to go.
No, I don't think there's nobody's asking questions on the channel right now.
Okay. I saw there were a couple of other people in. So my other question was, is it possible for me to upload a CSV? I haven't figured out how. I don't know if there's a limit in my permission to bring something in, or if I just don't know how.
So the limitation is only in the sense that you need to get permission to get this data onto the cluster.
Okay, so I can't. So I would have to go through. Because this was just based on stuff that I had output from the cluster, and then I just kind of was cleaning. Was just trying to get a better mapping for the companies. Some of the companies that are presented as separate company IDs are actually the same company, stuff like that.
Sure.
So I actually worked on that off cluster and wanted to bring that back in, but I would need to go back through the system.
Yeah. You just send an email to Natalie or Kevin, whatever the process is, to say, hey, here's the data. I just want to push it back. I just want to put it back on the cluster. Is it okay? Chances are, for this particular case, they'll say, yep, not a problem. We can get it back on the cluster for you. And then you would just use WinSCP.
Yeah. Okay. Then I think I know. I had used WinSCP to bring it in, or to load it onto my node, whatever. But but then I wasn't able to call it. And now I think that was just because I didn't have the permission to do that.
So I think that there isn't any specific permission to upload it, as in you can upload it, and then I don't know if necessarily that will prevent you from doing it or trigger alarm, but I might be wrong. And when you do upload it to your home folder, not to the folder where you downloaded the other one from, because you might not have write permissions to that folder. But I think you probably have write permissions to your home directory on Gateway.
I tried both.
Yeah.
But maybe okay, so if once I have it in my home folder,
Hmm.
it's also probably a good thing because I hadn't asked for the permission because I didn't realize I needed to.
Yeah.
So once I've asked for the permissions and I've uploaded it to my home folder,
Yep.
I then I forget actually how what like I was writing to how
So
like what would I write in Pig to.
right. So you wouldn't necessarily write it in pig. Let's see. Let me see if I can get there. So I think this is a question of maybe it was already answered. How to uh, upload.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Upload script to gateway. Now, how to create a UDF, upload it to the cluster and execute using pig. No. Um, nope. That's not it. So this is more a question like I have a data set. How do I get it to? How do I get that data set to appear on the cluster and use it in my UDF, for example, right? So let's see. Let me just capture this so I don't forget. How to get a data file into the cluster.
But even
Once it's
I think where I'm blocking also is once I have it in the cluster, um, it's in CSV format.
uh-huh.
How do I like put that in a Pig object?
Sure, definitely. So let's get. Do you know how to do this first part? How to get it onto the cluster? Uh,
Um, it just via WinSCP put it in my.
yeah. So that will put it on the gateway machine, right? But that's not that will make it available for you to run when you go onto the gateway machine. However, it's not going to be available for use within the within any of your jobs yet, right?
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
So
an
no, I
extra
don't know how to
step.
do this.
Yeah. So there's an extra step there. So to push it onto the cluster once it's on gateway, you have to execute an HDFS Hadoop command. It's um, Hadoop fs put, and then you whatever your file name .csv, and then you put the destination. So user your name slash your file name, right? So what that will do is actually push the file that you have on the gateway machine into HDFS, right? And now it makes it available to be read.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
okay.
actually, I think that once I have that, I think that's the step I was missing. I think once I have that, um, I I think I know how to load it,
Okay. Well,
like load
I'll
a
write it.
file that's comma delimited.
Yeah, I think how to load this in how to load a data set into Pig once it's on the cluster. Because this is going to be a follow-up question, I'm sure, from many folks. And use the load command, right? And with Pig storage, uh, Pig storage, and you specify a delimiter. So this is comma separated, and you can put a comma. Now that will probably work for most cases. However, there
Yeah,
is
and I probably
a
want to specify the schema.
yeah, that's right. That's right with pig and yeah as file schema. Um, so once you've done that, that won't work for most cases. If so, that description on the screen right now doesn't cover the full extent of the comma separated file format. or tab separate comment format. So for example, sometimes the string fields are actually enclosed in quotes because they might contain quotes in them by themselves. So there's a different storage format which will work to handle a more broader set of questions. And let me look it up. Let me cheat and look it up because I use it somewhere else. And then impressed by demonstrating it. So there's actually another storage type, which is called CSV Excel storage. So that handles all the different sort of weirdness of comma separated value files. You still need to declare the schema. Yep. But once you've done those two steps, then you'll have a, you can load it however you want, right? So if now you're doing like so that this particular thing is useful if you want to then kind of do a join with this file, and then you can attempt to use that. There is another usage for your data files. So for example, for team 5, what we needed to get done is upload a dictionary of words, and then use that dictionary of words to sort of count how many of those words appear in the summary, right? So there wasn't a join there that I needed to do. Instead, what needed to be done in that case is you needed to use the file with the words in it inside the UDF. So that's if you find that you need to do something like that procedure is a little different.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you don't mind walking me through that while you're at it.
Sure. Yeah, I can do. Actually, I can cheat again because I can reuse code, which is not really cheating, but it's not.
What the smart people do.
This is not live. This is not a live coding session. So how to use data files in UDFs. Okay. So let me once again open up my local files so I can. There we go. So what you need to do is two things. You will need to modify your pig script to sort of say, I want to let me see, pull data, here we go. No. Yep. So you'll need to tell your pig script that, hey, I have this data that I want to use, and I want to push it to, and I want to reference in some way, right? So step one is to actually do this, right? So in your pig script, you need to let Hadoop know or let pig know that you will be using data files in this job. Okay, so this here uses, makes it simple to reference your data. And this here, this uploads the data to the machine running the UDF and gives it an an alias of slash data. So once you've done these two things in your Python UDF, you can then say, you can read it as if you're reading it from your local disk. So that data file. So let me give you the example of the Python UDF as well, so that we have it. Let's see. Well, I kind of wish I had it in a simple way, but I have it in a more complicated way, but I'll share that as well. And then this might be useful. So, so I'll give you an example of what the Python code looks like. And it's a little bit complicated, but I'll describe it, right? So the reason you want to do something like this, or to do it in a more complicated way, is because this allows you to not have to have this data in all the in all the places locally. So to highlight here, this is how you would open a file. So say inside your data.tarzip, you have it. You just say data net references, right?
Yep.
Now,
no, I think I'm. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
So the reason I wrap this in a class is so I can lazily read these files, and not try to read them when the job is kicked off. So when a pig job is kicked off, it will actually execute the Python UDF code. And if you don't use this kind of trick to lazy load the data, it will actually try to load the data when it's running it locally, and the data might not be available when you run it locally on Gateway. So you want to wrap it in a class so that you would only try to load it when it's actually running as part of the pig job, right? So here cool. I'll show you a companion UDF that actually uses this word set, but you can call it dictionary or whatever. Yeah, would be useful to you. I just need to find my mouse. Here we go. So here is a UDF that that does this, that actually uses that word set later, right? So here I declare this instance of word set, and then here's where the word set helping skills dictionary will be used. So when this function is first called, it will actually read the data from the location in HDFS and then use it here. So you kind of need.
So just to make sure I understand, if you had called instead the I think you have a function that doesn't open the data set, the first one maybe. No. No, that's just the self. If one of the functions didn't call the data,
Yep.
They're calling data sets. I'm just realizing. So as you call the helping skills module, is that what the right term? Then it's opening the helping skills text, but it's not loading the stop words.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would do it, and then you could get that done. So, and the only reason you need to jump through these kind of hoops is so that Pig doesn't try to open the files locally because they might not exist, right? That's the only difference to this. Okay. But this is sort of the example source of how to do this in UDF.
It's always helpful to have an example.
Mm-hmm.
Because I imagine I'll be creating that kind of thing as well.
Yeah. So the only other person on the call is Ramana, and he's one of the mentors. So if you have other questions, let's keep going, or we can actually look at how to make the schema declaration for Python in a more precise manner.
I think this is all for me. yeah, I think this is all I need for now. It's probably in a couple of days I'm gonna be like, oh man, I wish I'd asked this other thing. But I think
That's
for
fine.
now this is all that I need.
You can always send the questions again. So there's a very good, since you're getting kind of a little deeper into Python UDFs, and you might need a little more context when doing this.
Mm.
There's a really good sort of tutorial page from this company called Mortar Data. They actually went ahead and built a whole business around kind of using, having this sort of this ability to write Python UDFs and sort of write this uh, write these pig scripts where you don't really have a good understanding of how the underlying infrastructure work, or you don't have a lot of control of how the underlying infrastructure works, and it's difficult to like deploy stuff. So they build a business around that.
Cool.
But this writing Python UDFs is a good reference for some of the details.
Cool.
All right. That's all right. And then the takeaways here is need to get the right schema here. Yeah. And then possibly do something to use pig in a way that doesn't require loops.
Yeah, I mean, what I got from that conversation was I basically should try to figure out a way not to use loops.
Yeah, yeah. And if you do need to use loops, make sure that the input to the UDF is sort of a small data set.
Yeah,
Like maybe something that has a couple of hundred records, maybe on order of 1,000, but not like a million records, because then the UDF itself might fail. Like it might have memory issues, for example, right?
yeah.
If you're trying to store some stuff internally, you might run out of memory and the UDF might fail.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
I saw your email with the slides. I haven't had a chance to look at yet, but I'm excited to see what you guys have come up with so far
Yeah,
for your
great.
project. I mean.
That'll be awesome if you can sort of take a look and provide insight and feedback, what might be
Yeah,
useful.
I had been reading up on some management network literature for our own project, and I came across like a set of papers on gender in networks specifically.
Okay.
And so it seemed like very relevant to the question you were asking, and I meant to send you the list of papers.
Yeah, please
so
do.
Now that I
Please
remember,
do.
I'm gonna send that.
Yeah, that'd be very useful.
Cool. Well, thanks for your help.
Of course. Of course. All right, let me
All right.
see if. Thank you for joining and making sure that I'm just not talking to the screen today.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Ramana,
Bye.
do you have any questions? All right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, just got off mute. Nothing in particular, but I think is Bobak on?
He was on for a little bit and then he signed off, but I saw
Okay.
him.
I think yesterday he pinged me about a question he had. He was going through the tutorials and stuff from way back because they just got on board.
Okay, got it.
And there was some comment in there that said upload the file to Nerds or go log into Nerds or something, which
Okay.
I assume was a typo and they don't have access to it.
Okay.
I'll get the details, but is my understanding right?
That about uploading to Nerds?
That Nerds is our production cluster,
Yes.
and
Yes.
data flows from Nerds to the EGC cluster.
That's correct.
In a cleansed form, and all the access for EGC is through the cleansed cluster.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, bridge.
Bridge is the name of the EGC cluster.
That's correct.
And gateway is the host that we use to access the cluster.
That's correct.
Just clarifying terminology. All right, that was my question for now. So I use it consistently and don't confuse them as well.
Yeah. Gateway is the machine on which you sort of land, and then bridge is the name of the cluster. But I think we're calling it like EGC cluster.
Yeah, so I've heard different terms used back and forth, but I don't know what the consistent naming convention should be. I'll just refer to it as bridge. If that's the name of the cluster, we'll just call it bridge.
Yep, that's fine. That's what
like bridge the card game as opposed to bridge a physical bridge.
No, I think it's bridge, like a bridge. Although English is a second language for me, so it might be the.
No, that's fine because our naming conventions for Hadoop clusters have always been card games, so that's why I'm asking.
Ah, that makes sense. No, it's spelled I think the same way as it's spelled the same way. The game and the thing is spelled the same way. So. But that makes sense. It
does. And nothing in particular for today, but I'll go through some of the older recordings and get back to you if I have more questions.
Okay, great. And they can always, always send questions just to the mentor list whenever they pop up. This is just if somebody wants to kind of have a more detailed session. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just listening and I had nothing in particular to ask, but thanks for running it.
No, of course. All right. In that case, I'm going to end it early today, and we'll be back in session, I think, on next Tuesday. It's the next one.
Sounds good. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.